Right now, while you're watching this, there's a good chance an animal is somewhere near you. A dog asleep by the door, a cat on a windowsill, a bird outside, a spider in the corner, and 100 trillion bacteria living inside your gut that you will never see. You barely notice any of them. They're just there. But here's the strange part. You are not the work of humans alone. Not your body, not your mind, not even the way your eyes move when you look at someone you love. Every one of those things was shaped by other species, pressed into you, slowly, over hundreds of thousands of years, by animals that hunted you, animals that fed you, and animals that chose, for reasons of their own, to come closer. We like to tell the story of humans as one species, climbing alone. We left the trees, we stood up, we outsmarted everything and rose to the top by ourselves. It's a clean story. It's also wrong. You did not evolve alone. Nothing about you did. And once you see how much of you was built by other creatures, it gets very hard to say where the animal ends and the human begins. Start with the part we'd rather forget. For most of the story, we were not the hunters. We were the hunted. And predators didn't just chase our ancestors, they sculpted them. There's a famous fossil called the Tong child, the skull of a young human ancestor who died in South Africa around 2 million years ago. For decades, people assumed a creature that small must have been killed by a big cat. Then researchers looked closer at the damage around the eye sockets. The puncture marks didn't match a cat at all. They matched the talons of a large bird of prey. This child wasn't a hunter who got unlucky. This child was carried off by an eagle. Sit with that for a second. One of your earliest relatives was small enough and weak enough that a bird could eat them. For a long time, science told a flattering version of our past, man the hunter. Strong ancestral males striding across the plains, spears in hand, dominating everything in front of them. But two anthropologists looked at the actual evidence and wrote a book with a very different title, Man the Hunted. For most of our evolution, our ancestors were prey. On the menu for leopards, lions, hyenas, crocodiles, and yes, eagles. And being prey changes you. When everything around you wants to eat you, the individual who wanders off alone dies. The one who stays with the group, who reads a warning in someone else's face, who feels that cold spike of fear and acts on it, that one survives long enough to have children. So fear got built in. The constant low hum of watching, listening, checking the dark. We became social in part because being solitary got you killed. So the first answer is already a little grim. We didn't evolve alone because we couldn't. Alone meant dead. But here's where it turns. Because it wasn't only enemies out there in the dark. Something was watching us too. And instead of running, it started to follow. Picture a campsite tens of thousands of years ago, humans around a fire, and at the very edge of the firelight, just out of reach, wolves. Not attacking, watching. The boldest ones edging in to scavenge the scraps, then slipping back into the dark. The wolves that were too aggressive got driven off or killed. The ones that were too fearful never got close enough to eat. But the ones in the middle, the calm ones, the ones who could stand being near us, they ate a little better. They survived a little more. And over thousands of years, that thin sliver of tolerance widened into something that had never existed before. A wolf that looked toward humans instead of away from them. The first dogs. When did this happen? We honestly don't know. The estimates run anywhere from 15,000 to 40,000 years ago. But we have something better than a date. We have a grave. In a place called Bonn Oberkassel in Germany, archaeologists found two humans buried together around 14,000 years ago, and buried with them was a dog. We know that dog had been sick as a puppy. Seriously sick, an illness that should have killed it. But it didn't die, which means someone kept it alive. They fed it, they kept it warm. They cared for an animal that, at that age, could do nothing for them in return. 14,000 years ago, somebody loved a dog. They nursed it through sickness. And when they died, the two of them were buried side by side. I find it almost impossible to read that as anything other than love. This wasn't a tool. This was a relationship, and it left a mark inside both species. There's a hormone called oxytocin, the chemistry of bonding, the thing that floods a parent looking into their newborn's eyes. In 2015, Japanese researchers found that when dogs and their owners simply look into each other's eyes, oxytocin rises in both of them. The same loop that bonds a mother to her child now runs between us and an animal of a completely different species. We didn't just train dogs. We let them into the part of our biology meant for our own children. And they walked right in. But dogs weren't the only species that changed us. The next one went deeper, past our behavior, all the way into our DNA. And it might be the most ordinary animal you can think of. A cow. Around 10,000 years ago, humans started keeping animals instead of only hunting them. goats, sheep, cattle, and with cattle came something nobody planned: milk. Here's the thing most people don't know. For almost the entire history of our species, no adult human could drink milk. As babies, we all produce an enzyme called lactase that breaks down the sugar in our mother's milk. Then, in childhood, the body switches it off. For most of human history, an adult who drank a lot of milk just got sick. But once people kept cattle, milk was suddenly there, year-round. And in the populations that drank it, a mutation began to spread. One that kept the lactase gene switched on into adulthood. It spread astonishingly fast in evolutionary terms. One of the strongest, most recent examples of natural selection in our entire species. And here's the part that proves the animal drove it. The same kind of mutation arose independently in cattle herding populations in Africa. Different mutation. Same result. Same cause. In a sense, cattle changed the human genome. Twice. That's not humans evolving and then using animals. That's an animal reaching into our DNA and shaping it. The cattle we domesticated turned around and domesticated a piece of us right back. And it goes even smaller, down to companions you've never once looked at. Trillions of bacteria live in your gut, and they aren't random hitchhikers. Some of these lineages have been evolving alongside us for millions of years, branching off at the same moments our own species did. They didn't just colonize us, they came with us the whole way. You are not one organism. You're a walking ecosystem, carrying species that have no future without you, and that modern humans rely on far more than most people realize. So step back. Predators carved fear and cooperation into us. Wolves became dogs and crawled into our bonding chemistry. Cattle edited our genes. Bacteria became part of our bodies. At every level. Human being is something built in partnership with other species. And there's one last piece of evidence. It's been on your face this whole time. We are the only primate with a large, bright white area around the colored part of the eye. Every other ape has a dark sclera that hides which way it's looking. Ours broadcasts it. You can tell from across a room exactly what someone is looking at. Scientists call this the cooperative eye hypothesis. Some of them think our eyes may have evolved to be easier for other humans to read. That in a species which survives by working together, by following each other's gaze, by trusting and being trusted, it became an advantage for others to see where you were looking. That our bodies were shaped, in part, for not being alone. And then there's a final twist. Honestly, this might be the strangest part of the whole story. Because the same process that turned a wolf into a dog, we may have run on ourselves. In 1959, a Soviet scientist named Dmitry Belyaev started an experiment that's still running today. He took wild silver foxes. Snapping, fearful, impossible to handle. And he selected them for one single trait. Not size, not color, just tameness. In every generation, he bred only the foxes that stayed calmest around people. And something he never selected for started happening on its own. Within a few generations, the foxes began to look different. Floppy ears, curlier tails, patches of white in their fur. Faces that stayed soft and juvenile into adulthood. He'd selected for friendliness, and a whole package of physical changes came along for the ride. Scientists call it domestication syndrome. Now look at a human skull from 100,000 years ago, and compare it to yours. Over that span, our faces got softer, our heavy brow ridges shrank, our jaws and teeth got smaller. Our skulls rounder, more juvenile, more like a child's. The same signature Belyaev produced in his foxes shows up across recent human evolution, and the leading explanation, argued most forcefully by the anthropologist Richard Wrangham, is that we did it to ourselves. It's still a debated idea, but many anthropologists find it genuinely compelling. Here's how. In a small ancient band, the most violent, domineering man was a problem for everyone, so the others did something no other ape does. They cooperated against him. They drove him out, or, in Wrangham's blunt reading of the evidence, the group simply killed him. Generation after generation, the cruel and the hot-headed were selected out by their own community, and the calmer, the more cooperative, were selected in. Some anthropologists argue we gradually selected ourselves for cooperation. That the same way we bred the wildness out of a wolf, we slowly bred a measure of it out of ourselves. So we aren't just the product of the animals around us. We are, in a real sense, a domesticated animal too. Tamed not by an outside hand, but by each other. The friendliness that lets you sit in a crowded room full of strangers and feel safe, that might be the deepest fingerprint of all. Not a predator's, not a dog's, ours, pressed into our own species by our own need to live together. So, did ancient humans evolve alone? No, they never did. Not for a single chapter of the story. The lone human conquering the wild by sheer will never existed. What existed was a small, frightened, social animal. That survived by clinging to its group. That let a predator become a friend. That traded with the creatures it raised until those creatures changed its blood. Human was never one thing. It was always a team. Which brings it back to right now, to the dog by the door, the cat on the sill, the 100 trillion lives inside you. You think of yourself as a single person, separate, self-made. But you are the latest draft of a story that other species have been writing into you since long before there were words for any of it. You were never going to evolve alone. None of us were. And the animal somewhere near you right now, the one you barely notice, somewhere far back, one of its kind helped decide what you would become.